We're really excited to introduce our resident artists to our community through this hybrid program. So I'm just going to do a really short introduction. We are going to have each of the resident artists do a super short 5-minute talk. There are 3 people who couldn't be here, or 4. So I'm going to just introduce you to their work again briefly. Those of us who are here in person will go downstairs. I'm so sorry, those of you who are on Zoom, you don't get any snacks and you can't come downstairs. But if any of you want to take a tour another time, just let us know. I am going to start by recognizing that this play studio stands on the indigenous territory known as Lenapehoking, the traditional homelands of the Lenni Lenape people. We would like to take a moment to reflect on the role of the Lenape as the past, present, and future stewards of the land, and the role that all of us play to join in the tradition of respect and caring for the land and each other. I am Jennifer Swilling, most of you know, curator and director of artistic programs. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm so excited to get to hear from all of the residents. I feel honored to be able to work with all of you. Your work inspires me. It is one of my favorite parts of my job. I'm also really happy to see on the Zoom and in person some alumni of the program, which is really gratifying. So really without further ado, the only thing I have on my list to say is thank you. It's an honor to work with you, and that the residency program is an outgrowth of the founders of the Clay Studio, 2 of whom are joining us today, and well, early adapters at least, right? And important founders and foundations. That's the term we're going for lately. So thanks to all of you. And I guess I didn't ask who wanted to go first. Does anyone want to volunteer to go first? Or I could do, actually, I'll do this. So Jinsik was not able to be with us today, but there is a lovely video on his Instagram. So I don't even have to talk. We're going to start with this lovely video. And those of you on Zoom, hear this. Can you hear it, Amy?
I'm working at the Clay Studio in Philadelphia as a resident artist. I make figurative and abstract human form through the manipulation of clay. I believe art is an artifact and an invention. Even if it's a human image, it's still something unknown. I admire the universe and art because they're objects I know, and that's why they can exist in a metaphor. It's something that can be recognized only through imagination. The figurative sculptures I make are the objects of constant exploration and a mirror at the same time. I can only look at and understand it based on what I know and experience. That is how the sculpture I express can be a self-portrait. In my undergrad, I majored in graphic design. Even though I love painting, since there was no artist in my family, I never expected to be an artist. There was just not an option. After graduating my BFA, I got several part-time jobs as a graphic designer for many years. I was depressed for a long time, and emotionally, I reached a point where I couldn't do corporate work anymore. I wanted to make my own artwork, not the client's. When I make a design project, it was like making answers. But I realized that I prefer to make good questions, not good answers. And so I quit. I just felt like I wanted to do something artistic, like painting, to heal myself. I tried many different materials like wood and fabrics. Then I thought, every material has their own character, like different speed, different powers, and directions to control. And clay was the perfect material to make me feel comfortable. I especially loved when I pushed my hand into the clay. The clay was pushed with the exact same amount of power and direction with my gestures. That's why I fell in love with clay. Before going to grad school, I worked on visualizing emotions. I've been suffering from depression for a long time, and overcoming that was not easy. I was obsessed with the idea that if I could see the emotion, it would be easier to find a way to figure out. And so I worked on visualizing emotions as abstract form. I began creating images in clay by converting them into ambiguous figures and abstract forms. In the process of cutting, attaching, pulling, and pushing the clay, the use of my body formed a very close relationship between the material, its expression, and me. After I graduated my MFA, I moved to New York City. I saw so many different forms of life, family, race, sexuality. At the first queer parade that I went to, I felt completely safe as a respected citizen. It was a monumental moment in my life. I never felt safety before. I've been afraid of and suppressed my pure identity for a long time. So much so that it felt insignificant, especially in Dante. Working with the figure form in this way gives meaning to that suppressed side of myself. The figure form sculpture functions as a kind of souvenir or trophy of my life. My work can be thought of as a slightly disorganized puzzle. And sometimes you have the experience of looking at each piece of the puzzle itself, not the finished picture. Imagine a new story by looking at a sculpture. I want you to notice that the story is your story. It's a conversation with my work, and that's what I love. My work will become a mirror and create new stories or memories based on what you have experienced, and make the moments a souvenir. That's why I make art.
Okay. That was lovely. Who wants to follow that? Okay, Lisa. Everyone's things are sort of piled up here. There it is.
Right. Should I use it from your computer or?
Yes, please.
Okay, great.
Oh, you know what? I don't think I shared. Hold on. I'm gonna get up and let you sit here. You might want to come on the side.
Okay.
Also, I'm not introducing people because they're introducing themselves. Liisa Nelson. Great.
Hi. Oh. Hey everyone, thanks for being here. So I'm Liisa Nelson, and let's see. Sorry, let's find the mouse. There we go. Oh, right. So I grew up in Montana, a place that is full of nature and beautiful open space, but without a lot of people. My father was a Lutheran minister and my mom was a nurse growing up. So I had a very kind of perspective that was based on like science and the body, and then kind of religion and spirituality. My parents like to tell a story of when I was a little kid and asked what was inside of me. And then they were like, well, take a guess. And I was like, God and germs. And so that's kind of been a question that I've continued to ask. Like ontological questions come into my work a lot. Like what does it mean to seek and to try and understand our existence as humans on this kind of fantastical planet, and then the relationship with science and trying to kind of learn more about the natural world and observation of nature, and then religion, and also kind of how dogmas tend to sometimes blind us, even though we're like looking for something. So I've done a series, a lot of work kind of throughout the years alongside other things that have to do with like sight and seeing and insight and kind of looking, and this kind of tension between looking to see and then looking and actually kind of like blocking yourself when looking. And then I've also, referenced different types of seekers. So one thing that I often return to is like alchemy and alchemical manuscripts. I think the medieval era is particularly interesting because people were looking at they kind of had this proto-science that was like alchemical experimentation, but they had like religion that they were trying to make sense of things with, and new technologies developing, and also like a lot of influence from kind of like folk religion of different varieties. And it was just this sort of time where everything kind of got like melded together. And I'm really interested in that type of or in just looking at how all those different influences came together and how people kind of made up stories and tried to find different systems before they had like forms of high technology to kind of understand things, and the kind of like mess that created, but the illumination that sort of followed. So this is an image from the Voynich manuscript, which is a 15th century maybe fake, maybe authentic alchemy manuscript. It kind of has an interesting history, but I made a series of works that were based on some kind of humanesque plant forms from there. So that's like a life-size sculpture that I made during my first year of grad school. I refer to like archetypal imagery a lot. So this is sort of a mortar pestle, and also bringing in like mathematical references. So the infinity symbol and the grid are things that I kind of work into my things a lot. This is Hieronymus Bosch, Garden of Earthly Delights. And this piece has been something that I always return to and kind of find inspiration from. And I'm really interested in kind of like the Eden story and the sort of fall of humanity, and also the like feminist question about like, kind of Eve gets a bad rap. And I think that that's been prevalent sort of throughout history. So I'm interested in kind of like examining and maybe reinventing the Eden story. This is an installation piece that I made for my graduate thesis that was a sort of hanging garden that had this kind of like vision element viewed from up above, of these sort of like two almost openings like eyes, but also this kind of like idea about reflection and the thing being sort of doubled. And so taking a look at oneself, maybe taking a look at like, or, speaking of like relationships with the other, and then kind of seeing like, sort of how we try and see ourselves in other people and other maybe religions or worldviews, and that there's like things that we have in common, but also differences. So kind of all of those things, also thinking of like mitosis, cell division, and things like that with this kind of like doubling motif. Another one that's dealing with like body and garden imagery and kind of blending the idea of nature and our own existence. So kind of bringing together these mathematical languages of the grid and the body and architecture. So one of my most recent projects is these ancient Roman keys that I'm kind of looking at and remaking and trying to sort of reinvent what does it mean to access something, whether that's within society, whether it's within yourself, or either inner or outer knowledge. And so using the archetype of the key and referencing images of actual ancient Roman keys, and then kind of reinventing them to ask a question about how we can, I guess, reimagine where our history is taking us, and also kind of with a critical lens towards colonialism and that colonialist history, and kind of asking about how we can reinvent it. And then I'm also working alongside of the sculptural work on some vessels, and I haven't really engaged the vessel too much since I was like quite young in undergrad. So I'm like really exploring right now and trying to kind of create some design objects alongside my sculptural work. So that's some of that work. And here's just a couple of works in progress that are going on right now. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, Ruth.
All right, hello everybody. Thanks for being here. So this is where I'm from Northern California. It's a beautiful, very rural spot. And I think my growing up there, this being my playground, running around the woods and identifying wildflowers has had a lasting effect on who I am and what you'll see in my work. From the very beginning, when I first started working with clay, it's been about pots. It's about that as both a structure to work within, but then there's a lot of problem solving that comes with that. And I really like that problem solving. This is an early cake plate, and I still make cake plates today. And that it's a deceivingly easy form, but it has a lot of problem solving behind it. Another really important part of my work is its relationship to people and food. So within my family, food is our love language. But also when I'm making pots, I do as much research at home using my pots as I do in the studio, thinking about what I would use to, how I would use them, how food would look on them, will they fit in the microwave, all these technical things I have to consider. This pot is really special to me, that it was kind of the first time all these ideas came together with the glazing that I now take on. And so this is a great representation of how surface is a really important part of my work as well. And this is a little behind the scenes of what's going on to achieve said surface. So each color you see is a layering and an independent glaze that instead of layering on top of them, you're kind of setting them all next to each other. And then there are these little moments of kind of where the glaze shifts or melts, or these little magical moments that I get really excited about. My designs come from a bunch of different references, sometimes very direct, like the shooting star, which is a wildflower found in Northern California. But this was my time at Alfred, seeing the big whole fields of forget-me-not. But I also take some artistic pleasure in mixing and matching different leaves with different flowers. And so a lot of my designs are kind of a combination of my knowledge of plants, but then having fun as an artist. Same with my surfaces. Sometimes the form is setting up the design. So these are that kind of example where I'm really thinking about how I'm going to decorate it when I'm making it. Versus other times it's all about the form of the pot. And then I have a lot of fun wrapping the surface around the pot and thinking about how the design, because it's all glazed, is going to shift to the form. So sometimes that means that the design is going to actually kind of stretch to like the belly of a pot, and you're going to get some of this running. So while I'm here, I'm just considering all that kind of history, and I'm continuing to make a lot of exploration of glazes and decoration and form. And that's it. So thank you so much.
And if anyone has questions, we will definitely address them at the end. How about Stephanie?
Hello, everyone. Okay, I'm Stephanie Kantor. I'm one of the longest residents, I guess, here now. I'm in my 5th year. And yeah, so a lot of my work is really project-based. So I'm kind of starting with a theme or a concept for kind of each exhibit. So this was a piece, installation. A lot of it is installation based, and I use a lot of different, start with the ceramics, but then kind of fill out the exhibition with a lot of other materials. So this was called the Sometimes Pop-Up Kiosk, and this was a store that was in a kiosk in Denver, and this was located on like a really busy shopping center, the 16th Street Mall. So I was kind of playing around with the concept of a store and the souvenir. So I was making different pots and kind of sculptures that related to the location, and we were kind of playing around with the structure of the store. So it was always lit and looked like it was open, but I was only there for like 1 or 2 hours a week. So you could purchase things in very limited kind of sporadic times. But I loved just kind of playing with the density of the patterns and really kind of transforming, kind of making it was sandwiched between a Rite Aid and a CVS. So to have kind of the opposite of a shopping experience in between those. This was another installation. This was a group show at a historic bed and breakfast. So each artist was able to choose a room. So I chose the dining room and then made these candelabras. So as you'll notice, most of my work is really vessel based, whether that be candelabras or kind of sculptures of pot inspired things. But here I was kind of responding to some of the architecture features. So there was the green man that was kind of flanked on either side of the fireplace, which is kind of a man's face made of leaves. And so I titled this piece The Green Woman and kind of created this kind of fictional narrative of having this kind of like seance dinner that was kind of like slowly decaying with the duration of the exhibition. So this is like a laser cut tablecloth, and then the wax had dripped on the tablecloth, and the flowers were kind of decaying with the duration of the exhibition. This was a piece called The Trophy Wall. I am an amateur tennis player, but was kind of inspired by my dad's more successful tennis career. So I took a bunch of he kind of got rid of his trophies. He disassembled them, but kept the tops. So I took the tops from him and then cast them in bronze, and then reimagined the trophy for him. So I was kind of playing around with different ideas of competition, thinking about how kind of being an athlete or athletics kind of also feel a lot like an artist at times, you know, like kind of pushing yourself and your limits, and thinking about how, you know, exhibitions and success, and what does success look like, and how do you kind of flaunt it or display it. So kind of also thinking about trinkets and mementos, so kind of making lots of little kind of frames, tennis balls, different kind of figurines, all cast in clay or built out of clay. This was another kind of invited exhibition. So this show was titled The Fulfillment Center. So all the artists were asked to kind of respond to the idea of a fulfillment center. So I made these ceramic robots. So they're about life size, around like 4 or 5 feet tall. And I was kind of looking at, you know, just how lots of companies are integrating robotics into their store. Like Giant has this weird kind of like floating robot that cleans the store. Amazon has obviously tons of stuff, but kind of thinking about just the aesthetics of the buttons and the vents and all the kind of mechanics of them. But then making them in ceramic, they're really kind of the antithesis of an act. They do nothing except kind of look like a robot. And last but not least, this was my Zeldin Fellows show from the old clay studio. And this was titled Rosewater. So I was kind of exploring different themes of water and mythology that surrounds water, or containers that hold water. So kind of water as the basis, but kind of using that and thinking about the sea and the ocean, and my connection to like beach towns and souvenir shops. And just all things water. So that's it. Thank you.
And since we are still a working play studio, you get to hear the microwave in the other room. I don't know if you can hear that. A hungry artist is making dinner. Okay, Jen, would you like to go next? Oh, I left them on my desk, but I did. Okay, Jen's gonna go second to next. Yeah. Okay, sorry. I have her notes in my office. Who's that? That is Kevin. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Oh, we're on the wrong side. Okay, here you go.
Good evening. I'm Kevin Snipes, and I'm fascinated by humans' ability to create narrative out of the world around them. And that ability to do that has a lot to do with communication. It has everything to do with communication. We have to be able to communicate in order to describe the world around us. And as a little kid, I always had a lot of trouble communicating. I stuttered a lot. I talked too fast. Just all sorts of, I had sort of a little bit of a learning disability. So I used to draw cartoons a lot. And that sort of helped me get through lots of trouble with my own narrative. So recently, this summer, I had spine surgery, which like everyone here knows that. So I had my spine taken apart and put back together again a little bit differently than it used to be. So it's kind of uncomfortable. And I was hoping that by this time I'd be back in the studio, but I'm still not quite back yet. So I've been working on these small drawings. And one of the things I'm trying to do is to teach myself how to make art as I did as a child. When I was a child, not just drawing comics, but I also used to draw. I used to build dioramas out of shoeboxes and cars out of milk cartons and just all kinds of stuff out of stuff. And which is one of the reasons why clay is such a great thing, because it's three-dimensional and it's also about, I can make it about narrative. So one of the things that I used to do as a kid, building those dioramas of things, is to not actually have an idea of what I was doing. I would just start. And over the years, as being a ceramic artist, I feel like I've kind of lost that. You know, like I do that somewhat, but really it's like, that's such an empowering thing, just to be able to be in the moment of making art and just find it as you work. And so with these drawings, I'm really trying to find that way of working again. The eyes and these are collages and drawings and paintings, and so the eyes are cut out from text or like old books. So they have these little bits of words in them, and I feel like they're almost like a window into some language or something, some sort of communication that's not quite communicated. Essentially, like, I struggled with miscommunication a lot. And I think that part of that has to do with being a Black person in the field of art. You know, like, just people have assumptions or have had assumptions about me just because of the way I look. And that's always kind of added to this sort of anxiety of communication. So I make art. And even this talk is sort of a cultivating of a narrative using communication. So it's, you know, it's not just about a pretty picture. Thanks very much.
Did you make the paper?
Yeah, I'm making paper too. So I was going to include some of the paper, but I think I have some paper, one or two.
Thank you. Okay. Now we can have Jeanne. Oh boy, no, never mind. Sorry. I'm making faces and I realized that they're being recorded. Whoops. There we go.
Hi everyone, I'm Jeanne. I find it easier to read off a piece of paper than off my memory. So I've recently moved to Philadelphia from Edinburgh to begin my residency at the Clay Studio. My background is in sculpture and environmental art, which I studied at Glasgow School of Art and graduated in 2015. My work explores the interaction and interconnectivity between nature, design, and human experience in the context of our current climate crisis. My projects respond to different site-specific topics such as metamorphic rock, star constellations, and coral. I combine natural imagery with designed symbols and motifs. I'm interested in bringing together seemingly opposing elements, both conceptually and stylistically, to portray fluid relationships between our man-made and natural worlds. Towards the end of my degree, I was introduced to ceramics to create sculptures that could be waterproof and shiny for my final piece. I was instantly drawn to the medium and the transformation it goes through via different processes and how it can appear like many different materials but has a humble origin. I have no formal training in ceramics, and after I graduated, I was limited to what techniques I could use to achieve different effects. Up until recently, my work has had a minimalistic style where I've made graphic symbols depicting nature using slab building and slip casting processes. Last year, I began my journey into being more playful with my style and techniques to better respond to the themes I currently explore. This piece is inspired by horse mussel reefs in the North Sea of Scotland. Earlier this year, I carried out a self-tailored learning programme that was supported by Arts Council England, where I worked with different ceramicists based in Scotland to build on my skills and learn from their work, such as multiple part mould making, foraging for clay and minerals, making geological glazes at Highland Stoneware, and salt glazing at Edinburgh Pottery. The result of this has meant my work has progressed to have a more multi-layered effect. I made my most recent pieces while on a residency in Ullapool, a remote part of Scotland. The area was near a UNESCO geopark, which included metamorphic rock that was billions of years old. I was fascinated by the journey of transformation the rock had been on, down into the Earth's crust and back up again, to be reshaped and restructured into something else, and how I could respond to this using clay. I worked with cut-out inserts, placed cast embellishments that were just stuck on with glaze, imprinted marks, folded slabs over forms to create a feeling of the object melting, and salt glazed the works. I wanted the pieces to feel strange, timeless, otherworldly, as if like something washed up on a shore that has been shaped over many years, its journey unknown and not witnessed by anyone. Alongside the natural imagery I was responding to, I also looked at cogs and clock hands as a way to interweave our human constructs of time and movement into the pieces. What I hope to do over my residency, at the moment, I'm thinking of my work as sketching ideas, playing with processes and how they relate to my themes. I'm aiming to build a project inspired by the geology of the Wissahickon Valley, mystical stories and interpretations of the landscape through different imagery and understandings. I'm excited to continue working with soda firing as the clay studio has a new salt kiln. I also hope to build upon my installation practice to create works that expand beyond the object. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Bumi, would you like to go next? Thanks.
I'm gonna try and breeze through this because I have way too many slides. But anyway, my name is Adebunmi Gbadebo. I am a multimedia artist, and I'm gonna talk about my practice. I'll start here. I guess the real kind of crux and foundation of my work started when I made a shift from using traditional materials like paint and used Black hair as my only and sole material. And that decision came out of, I guess, just the reality, especially studying art and being in art school where you learn about this historical canon. And it becomes, especially to me, it became very apparent how people who look like me were excluded from this canon as either the maker or worthy to be a subject. And because this history is primarily told through this material paint, for me, it wasn't enough just to like ground my work in this Black subjectivity, because the paint itself, the material itself still carries this white centric history. So for me, Black hair, it literally carrying our history, coming from our bodies. It comes from this woman who cuts her hair off in this private moment in her bathroom, or the intimate moment between a barber and a customer. And I was interested in exploring that conceptually and materially. These are some earlier pieces. This piece is actually on exhibition currently in Slash Art Gallery in San Francisco. It's called Dada, and I was playing a lot with kind of at that period being the only Black student in my graduating class, being hyper aware of like kind of my me in relationship to my class and faculty. So I was playing around with like double meanings, Dada, alluding to like the art movement where there was a questioning of material and what could be material, but also in the Yoruba tribe in Nigeria, Dada means sacred hair. So this piece goes, it's 20 feet of locks by two different people. And it literally forces you to look up to Black hair. This is another piece where I hand sewed hair onto canvas, literally inserting ourselves onto a surface that is usually used for material that has historically not been depicted of our contributions. This, I don't know, wow, that's really pixelated. I'm gonna just skip right through that. I don't know why that was pixelated. This was a 40-foot line of hair of like different lineages of women that is all threaded together, and it kind of cuts through this white gallery. And I guess as I was working a lot with hair, I would get donations and letters of families, you know, or donations from like a mother and a son or two sisters. And it was forcing me to look a lot at my own family and ancestry. So in this series, I was taking Black hair, pulverizing it into a pulp and making sheets of it and printing images of my own family onto the sheet. And that kind of led to a series that I've been working on at my other studio in Philly. We should do, oh, never mind, okay. True Blue, like looking further into my own ancestry and really interested in kind of unpacking my relationship to this space, this land. It starts at True Blue Plantation, where my maternal line, my mother's family, the Ravenels, were enslaved. So I was taking Black hair and cotton, which now grows on True Blue Plantation, and indigo and hair dye and denim. True Blue was an indigo and rice plantation, and making these sheets and printing documents. Here's an example of a will. It's really hard to make out, but like the bottom lines, it lists humans, their price that they were worth, and the second to last thing says 60 head of cattle. So this was like an appraisal list by an enslaver who owned my family, listing humans and animals. And these were some of the documents you could see here in a detail shot of the sheet where it lists the name, the age, and the role of the people. And I was like really conflicted because on one hand, I was getting these names of people who were enslaved on this land, which was really important when you think about these histories of slavery and how they systemically just erase us. But on the other hand, thinking about how we were showing up in this history as like this object or property. And in 2020, and it started off finding this article. I found out that this man in this photo was a relative, was doing a lot of work to care for and preserve True Blue Cemetery, which is the burial ground for the enslaved and their descendants in True Blue Plantation. If you visited the plantation currently, it's just acres of cotton fields, which I recently stole some cotton and almost got caught and died, but that's another story. But deeper beyond the acres is this woodland where the cemetery is. Oh, is it hard to play video?
It's good. Yeah, I just want to make it so that it's shared so people can see it on the.
I don't need to play the
No,
video.
no, okay.
Or how do I hit play?
Here, let me just okay. I don't mind.
I'm gonna wrap this up.
How did it seem like it went to the okay.
Resume share.
Yeah, share.
Okay. So if you the kind of at the front of the cemetery, it looks like this, where you see like headstones, more contemporary headstones, and the trees are cleared and the land is cleared. And this is due to the work of my cousin Jackie, who was in that article, or yeah. How do I hit next? Do I?
I'm gonna go back to the thing.
Sorry.
To share.
And then I think this. And then
yeah.
Okay. There's another video.
I should have left it in the slides thing. That's what happens when I download it. Is it right away?
Yeah, we could just go to the next one.
That's fine. Just do it that way and then go back to the start.
But as you get deeper into the cemetery, where like headstones or bodies would be from like 200 years, 300 years, it looks like this. And this is just us walking through trying to identify headstones during that time period. And I'll,
I think if you just minimize that. You're good.
Okay, and and I'll just slide through. Like you see how the land is just completely engulfed. The headstones, some bodies are marked by just broken glass. Some headstones are completely tumbled over or broken. There's major craters all over the cemetery where bodies 200 and 300 years old have just decayed. And this is a headstone from probably over 200 years old where you can't even make out who was buried there. So I've been thinking a lot about the information that is lost and how a lot of what is important to this space and how it came to be is lost to the land. And that has literally, I'll just through these things. But and that is kind of what brought me to kind of transition again into ceramics. Here's like a non-photoshopped image of what the soil looks like. But it from this trip thinking about like what is lost to the land, how this memory is carried in the land, came the thought, can I make a body of work from the very land that my family was enslaved and currently buried? Which brings me to the clay studio. And then here's some works. This piece is inserted with the Carolina gold rice, the same grain that was grown on True Blue. And I think a lot about like the memory and the information that is embedded and within these materials. And I guess I'll just finish by saying, like, you know, like doing this work and working with this soil, I've thought a lot about like just how I, working right now, have this privilege to literally shape this land in whatever way I could imagine, and how that privilege and that freedom wasn't afforded to my ancestors. And I see that in like how I create the different forms and the different shapes, and yeah. Okay, and that's it. Yeah.
Hey, I think Dante is our last. I'm sorry, Chris. Yes, you've been sitting there the whole time. And Chris and Dante. Do you have, oh, you have this down. Okay, good. Go ahead and plug it in. That it? Go for it. Let me know if you need help.
Let's do you guys want to see pictures first or a movie first?
Do the movie first.
Movie? Okay. Because it might be difficult.
Okay. Want me to do the share?
Yeah.
When you're not.
Okay, so I just got back. I did kind of like a short stint in Oregon, firing a onigama kiln for 10 days. And this is a video that I kind of segmented together of different shots from the firing. And I guess how it really ties into my work and some things that I've been thinking about are just really understanding the resources and time that go into producing an object. And for me, I really like to be close to that process. And actually I think that process that really influences the work that I make, and how I can better understand, I guess, geology and the formation of those materials as having history. So here's a shot, and it's just kind of candid. So this was stoking the onigama. This is side stoking, so this is like a little further back in the kiln. There's the flame coming out the chimney. This is a higadashi, which is a Japanese technique for assessing surface. Pull a piece out of the kiln and let it oxidize and cool really quickly, and then you can observe the surface, and that helps you determine how much surface is developed. There's the anagama breathing. It has like this draw that kind of happens. So that's the video, and then
you want to open it?
Yep. I'll just do that. Okay. All right, thank you. So this was kind of a cool opportunity. On the property, they have like a conservation easement, which basically means that no human permanent structures can be built. And there's a team of conservationists that like assess the land and just make sure that it's well cared for and preserved as it should be. So I got the opportunity to kind of drive around with them, and fire danger is a really big problem there, and they had a really bad fire season last year. So just taking care of the land is really important, so that you want to sustainably thin the forest from the dead trees, especially. Otherwise you can have like a really horrible fire that can spread really quickly and burn unnaturally. And a big problem, and I've kind of talked about this before, but a big problem with forestry is nowadays, because of climate change, there's a lot of beetles and bugs that didn't exist before that were brought over from other places. And those invasive species kill the trees and then basically just leave this giant tree that's essentially soaked in gasoline, that's like perfectly dried, just waiting to catch fire. And what can happen is, if enough of those trees exist and enough of them catch fire, they actually burn. That wildfire moves through and burns the entire tree rather than just like the needles and the branches. So it can decimate entire forests. And then these diseases can also do the same thing. So I've seen, like, even driving out, you can see throughout parts of Montana where it's just like probably like 1,000-acre hillside that's just every single tree is dead from the pine beetles. And that usually has to be around -30 for like 2 weeks, at least in Montana, for those trees to no longer carry the beetles. But we haven't had a winter like that in like 15 years. So every year it just like stacks up. So going around with conservationists and identifying trees and then being able to harvest them removes that fuel source from the fire, from the possibility of a fire. And then also we get to use it to make our wares. So these were 2 people. And one of them just moved there from Texas and was like very out of sorts, but we were like driving the 4-wheeler and like off-roading in the snow. It was pretty cool. And just going around and like looking at different trees, and they were kind of helping me determine like, okay, like this tree, you know, clearly doesn't have a habitat. There's a safe way to harvest the tree without affecting other living trees nearby. So this was a tree, it was a ponderosa pine, and it was probably 120-ish feet tall. So we can get like 2 cords of wood out of that. So pretty significant amount of wood from just that one tree. And there's the kiln firing. So we're kind of like perched up on this hillside, which was pretty cool. And it snowed a bunch, but we slept in a yurt without any running water for like 10 days. And it was very kind of, I don't know, it was a really cool experience. We got to ski to our last, to the kiln unload. It was pretty sweet. But here's a shot in the firebox, and you can see, you know, 10 days at, I guess it was maybe like 6 days at cone 10, and just like developing those surfaces and really being careful and, I don't want to say mathematical, but systematic in the way that we are like burning down certain coal beds at different time and really getting the work exposed to heat and exposed to wood when we wanted them to be, just to help influence the way the pieces come out of the kiln. And then these were just a couple of the pieces that I made that I was kind of excited about. And you can really see in this one, like how the ash is just very varied in surface, and how it's kind of like, it's not beaded up fully. So it's not like running necessarily, but it is kind of like this real matte kind of surface, and that kind of aesthetic is definitely something that I'm drawn to in both of these pieces. Kind of like having just a subtle amount of beauty without something that's just so overpowering that you have a hard time connecting with the material and the way it was made. Yeah.
Thank you. I got it. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to pull this out without.
Okay.
We can leave it in too.
I just think it's... Yeah.
We'll just leave it in.
Okay. Where's Chris's? I know it's here somewhere. I know you did, and I thought I opened it. Hold on, everyone. Okay. Sorry, everyone. Hold on 1 second. Yes. There we go. Last but not least.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Rodgers. Same for my website. I'm from West Virginia, and I also went to grad school at the University of Arkansas. I'm halfway through my residency. It's 5-year. It's 2.5 years. I just really wanted to focus on this body of work that I made during my first year as a resident artist. It often takes a long time for me to construct a body of work. I often kind of start right from the beginning with a new framework or new rules, strategies that I implement for myself as like a system for the decision making. So I set up these parameters, and then the work kind of goes through these rules that are self-constructed. So each body of work can sometimes look fairly different, and it does take a long time within this body of work. There are 17 objects, and I was thinking of how to create something else as the focal point. I definitely consider myself a sculptor, but my primary material is ceramic. And so I was thinking of something else that could be the focal point, where without that material, then it all kind of falls apart. And so it became mirror within this body of work. And so I think that the mirror is a very like loaded symbol. There's a lot that it references historically. I mean, the story of like Narcissus comes to mind for myself, or this object that we each carry with us at all times in our pockets, in our hands, glued to our face. So those were different rules and strategies. I was also thinking a lot of, in terms of the frame at this time, I was thinking of photography, and also the image, and thinking how something that is three-dimensional, something that is seen in the round, then can be constructed as this idea of something that is not flat, but references this flatness. I was also really, so I mean, there are like lots of layers often that I kind of work through, and in thinking a lot of how society views itself different societies view like this like larger view of self through different periods of time and place, and thinking of this like leap into modernity within like the 19th century was something that was on my mind, and thinking of symbolism, which it is something that I really wanted to be like focal, like the bird, the cloud, the shoe, the skull. I mean, they're almost like the what are they called? The icons when you text someone, what are those called? The emojis. Thanks. Sorry, that's the word I forgot. So there, I mean, so many of these are emojis. So you can see here, there's like this very much I don't know, they're flat, you know, the backside I think is though equally significant for me to like think of the round. I was thinking, I may have already said this, but I was thinking of like frame, like how to frame, how to contain, how to construct framing within like image, within like painting or photography, and how to like borrow that within sculpture. So even these frames are ceramic. So that's also like, I try to learn something new just in terms of making. And so making these slabbed pieces was so difficult, and I was constantly aggravated because if they crack, then to start fresh, and they're not like completely solid all the way through. They're actually, there's space in between. So the frames, the slabs are pretty thin, 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch usually. I mean, they're still heavy. So I was thinking of trying to make it just like lighter in terms of if I needed to ship or move the work. The work, I do think it is a whole. So when broken apart, it becomes like fragmented and disjointed, which it now is. All my work becomes that way. So it kind of exists once or twice and then never again, really, with the way that I think of it intending to be. And the mirror does operate differently within each piece. Sometimes the frame is like a upside down T, uppercase T. So it could be that well, I'll show you in a moment. There's like this apple, and so on one side it's the core, you can kind of see, and then on the back side it's the complete apple. And then even like thinking of like display and arrangement, and how they're viewed and what they're viewed on. And so thinking of steel as a material that is dense and heavy, but it's also very like rigid, and it does express, I think, lightness within this work. Wood would have been very heavy, so I was welding in my backyard at this time in like 100 degrees summer with, what are those red bugs that are everywhere in Philadelphia? Lantern flies screening whatever it is on me up from above. So yeah, it's like really hot and gross. Clouds, I was thinking a lot about like Magritte at this time also. You can see half of a plane here. So the plane is depicted full. The skull constructed through its own reflection as being whole, but then also reflecting, looking at itself. This work is kind of small for often how I make. They're tabletop objects compared to, I often make very large. And so like this is very different from that previous body of work. I've been invited to exhibit in Figurine Space, which opens January 12th and runs through April something. I don't know, that's very far from me. So this is based off a sculpture, which is at the Vatican. There's this whole story. Jay-Z and I talked about this a lot yesterday. I just thought a lot about that previous work, and so this is kind of out of my head right now, but come see this piece, it's huge. Half of it is in the kiln right now, which is exciting. The other half is in my studio. And several of us, Ruth, Stephanie, myself, we're having solo shows this year, which we're very excited about. And this is a body of work from while I was in grad school. And it seems so foreign from me now. I mean, not that long ago, 2018, but there are a lot of ideas here that I'm hoping to revisit within the exhibition that I'll have downstairs. Very large objects, I'm sure. That's it.
Excellent. Okay. I'm going to share really briefly, just so that we make sure everyone is represented. Let me get that one ready. Minah Kim is at the moment in, actually, I think she's in Italy right now. Is that right? At a residency. Oh, actually. So this is Minah's website, and I wanted to show it to you first because I guess we have a video theme going, but this one, I guess because it's embedded in her website, is working. And it's a really good example of Minah's working method, which often has lots of repetition, repeated forms to create small things that make a whole. There is it's often time-based and has the audience as part of the artwork. The interaction of the audience with the piece is important to her. And for this one, which is called Audience, she recorded the sounds. I don't know if you can hear it. She recorded the sounds of the audience members walking on the space. And Minah Kim is from South Korea, where she earned her BFA and MFA at Ewha Women's University. She recently completed her MFA at the University of Arkansas and showed her pieces internationally and nationally, including the Asia Contemporary Art Show in China, here at the Clay Studio, District Clay in DC, Frankfurt Herbstmesse in Germany, Seoul Art Center, Gimhae Clay Art Museum, and others. And last year, right before she started here, she was a resident at Mass MoCA. And here are some other images of the work that she makes. And she's making some really wonderful things in her studio at the moment. So again, some of us will go downstairs and others will have to come another time. Josephine is in Denmark at the moment. Josephine Better Larsen is a Danish-American ceramicist born and raised in the US to a mother and father who immigrated from Denmark in the 90s. The last 10 years, split living periodically in the US and Europe, have been dedicated to her education and work experience within the field of ceramics. Larsen's education in ceramics reflects her bicultural background, as she holds a BA in design from the Royal Danish Academy of Fine Art in Denmark and an MFA in ceramics from Cranbrook Academy in the US. Specific context of Denmark, however, has been instrumental in the establishment of her artistic identity, as it carries a long history of high-quality craft and design. At the nucleus of Larsen's practice is a strong sense of craftsmanship. And it's a little hard to tell in some of these images, although you get a glimpse of it here, that these pieces are quite large. So these are sort of person-sized, leaning against the wall. And I know from speaking to Josephine that she's working big again in her studio, but also working on some functional work. So it's interesting to see these huge, large-scale forms being interpreted as small functional objects, which are equally beautiful. And the bottoms are really nice. So if you pick up one of her pots, make sure to touch the bottom. Akiko Jackson is from the North Shore community on the island of Oahu in Hawaii. Jackson holds an MFA from Virginia Commonwealth University School of the Arts and an MA from California State University. Jackson has exhibited her work nationally and internationally, including the Wing Luke Museum of Asian Pacific Experience in Seattle, the Virginia Museum of Contemporary Art, the American Museum of Ceramic Art in Los Angeles, the Orange County Center for Contemporary Art, 1708 Gallery in Richmond, the Fourth World Ceramic Biennale in Korea, and Australian International Ceramics Triennial in Sydney, Australia. And you can see that she also is a multimedia artist. These are felted forms that she's created and hung on the wall. And then she, her practice also obviously is very focused on ceramics. And you can see in this body of work that she also is interested in repetition. There was just recently, it just closed last week, a show at Commonweal Gallery in Philadelphia with a section of these wonderful large black vessel forms and a new felted fabric piece on the wall. Did I forget anybody? No, that's all. Okay, great. Wonderful. Okay. Okay, thank you. Does anyone have a question? I think we don't have too many people online anymore. Any questions, Amy? Rebecca? No, that's okay. All right, great. Well, bye-bye Zoom people. See you later.